It's a great honor for me to introduce our next guest, obviously the 51st governor of the state of Indiana, Eric Holcomb. Since taking office in 2016, Governor Holcomb has been a great champion for the tech and the innovation community, from making record investments in broadband to establishing the Next Level Fund, expanding venture capital tax credits, which are near and dear to my heart, and to driving a new and innovative ideas in the workforce and economic development. Thank you, Governor. We appreciate your commitment to both the state of Indiana, the technology interests, and to the Next Level Fund. And thank you for joining us today. We'll jump right in. There was a recent report, Brookings Institute, in partnership with the folks over at CICP, that found out that Indiana possesses significant strengths coming out of the pandemic, has already demonstrated an impressive economic rebound. One of our admittedly weaker points, however, is in new business creation and entrepreneurship, which are the drivers, as we all know, of most of the net new job creation. Nearly 40% of the Indiana firms are at least 16 years old, and those companies employ about 80% of the state's workforce. According to Kaufman Entrepreneurial Index, Indiana ranks 42 out of 50 states for entrepreneurship. What can we do to encourage new business generation in our state and get a stronger culture of entrepreneurship going in Indiana? We've obviously heard from a lot of great people this morning doing tremendous things. What would you care to add?
Well, that was a mouthful, David. But it did end with a question, and I will try to answer it directly. Number one is I appreciated and try to keep life in balance in general, but I try to look at both sides of the ledger, and Brookings, I read that report, a very important report. There are also other rankings that show, to me at least, another side of the story, not a contrarian side of it, but another side. For instance, small business and the Entrepreneurial Council ranked Indiana's number one in the Midwest, top 6 in terms of an entrepreneurial climate. CEO magazine, and you can go through a bunch of different rankings. CEO magazine, Indiana number 1 in the Midwest, top 5 in the country for business climate. So we have this, to me at least, an incredible, we have incredible potential, understanding that we have a ways to go, but in some respects, I believe, and this isn't an egocentric statement, but I believe we're just kind of getting started. And so when I first reached out to actually some of you in this room and sat down about 4+ years ago and said, what is it that we need to do to really move the needle? And I got suggestions like more flights, direct, nonstop flights, SaaS, you mentioned Next Level Fund, all these things that take time to mature, for sure, but they are, and there is some serious momentum now, all the while resting on one of our strengths. I get to go around the country and the state and world, as a matter of fact, and kind of brag on what's going on here. We always talk about we're the RV capital of the world. We're the medical device capital of the world. We've got these industries of the future, life sciences, et cetera, right in our backyard, and a rich agrarian, advanced manufacturing getting ever more so every year, all because of the tech industry. So it ought to play it ought to be advantage our serve, really.
Yeah.
And so your question is very important to me, and it's something we think about all the time. But I just never lose sight of the fact of the incredible momentum that we do have. Another suggestion that came out of those very initial conversations, and Donna's here, I was reminded with Innovate Within, we got to start young. And to change the culture, because, part of this is, look, one of our strengths is we're a very risk-averse, conservative state with very deep roots. And that is a strength as well. When I look around and I talk to a lot of CEOs that are thinking about where they're going to get the most bang for their buck, you look at Indiana, we're just not going to cover off the ball. We have an ecosystem that helps you grow at your scale and pace. Now, what more can we be doing to nurture and cultivate at the very early stages, Elevate Ventures? innovate within, getting into our K through 12, developing these direct pipelines. Something I'm so impressed with in the manufacturing sector is around the world, by the way. I was in Tokyo City and I went out to an auto manufacturer, and they had fourth graders in white lab coats, and they were doing laser welding. And it was to not just show how to do laser welding, it was to show that there are career opportunities within 13 miles of your home address. And not only did you know that, but your parents were invited to come out too. And they saw all the different options that were out there, demystified, or got to see just how technical, what skills were required. So, Scott Dorsey and others told me we got to get computer science in every classroom in the state of Indiana. So again, not to sound offensive, but we're making these steps, but we got to start very young. This is a whole pipeline and pathway for students. Elevate Venture is very important for those new seeding, those new businesses. But quite frankly, when I look at where we are the first half of this year, Elevate Ventures puts out a semi-annual report, and we're up about 700% compared to where we were the first half of last year. So maybe avoiding answering your question directly, but we got to do it all. I mean, we got to do it all, and we have to be nimble and agile enough to recognize how state government reacts to the changing scene on the ground in the private sector, and truly be partners.
Yeah, I've read a lot of reports over the last probably 20, 30 years that you have to grab the students by the time they get to fifth grade. At junior high, mind is starting to wander. By high school, they're gone. And if you don't catch them early on and get them into the thought process, you've missed the mark.
Yep, and another thing, and I was looking down on this, I was going to force my way into bringing up the READY program that we just rolled out, which is a huge deal. And another suggestion that I got, or recommendation that I got years ago at the very outset, was we got to not just start younger, we got to get connected. Like, there is a digital divide, and as everything becomes more dependent, every business, if you're going to survive, you got to be introducing tech advantages to your business, every sector, which means we got to make sure we're connected. 5G, 6G, we're just out west meeting with Ericsson about all the technology that's out there and what's going to be happening in 5 and 10 years. And I think, again, that's one of our strengths, is if we continue to nurture this golden goose, it continues to, when you think about today, it will be public, it probably is already, but we're $260 million over the forecast for last month. Like, our economy is growing at a much faster scale and pace than our neighbors. Our in-migration much higher than our neighbors. Our unemployment lower than every neighbor that we touch. So a lot of indicators, and the important part about all that is not just so I can sit here and brag about numbers, but what do you do with it? Like, how do you reinvest in addiction recovery efforts, or infant mortality, or you name it, tech, nurturing our tech sector? Fortunately, we have the ability to do that. So I look forward to any good suggestion that helps us get there faster, preferably in the next 3 years.
Well, you mentioned
that is egocentric. No, I mean, we ought to have a sense of urgency about this. I mean, this is kind of our moment. We ought to be running the score up on those who aren't in as strong of a financial position as we are.
We had that conversation early this morning. As Hoosiers, we don't brag enough about our successes and tell the outside world what's really going on. There's an awful lot of people in here that could help you spend that $260 million pretty quickly, I think, which leads into the next question of the next level fund. We put it together back in 2017. It was to be Indiana-based venture funds over 5 years to support the growth and creation of some of the startup companies and some of the folks in this room. To date, about half of that has been committed. A quarter of it's been called. What can we do to accelerate getting that capital and ensure it's invested in Indiana firms at a very critical time, as you just pointed out, in our economy, that a lot of good things go on. How do we make it better?
Well, that's another one of those conversations, or examples of those conversations, where I was cautioned. This is absolutely necessary. We need this. It will take time to turn the ship. I think our current numbers are about 61% has been deployed. It has been shifting more so to Indiana. Elevate Ventures is something that I would actually like to grow even more, not just the next level fund. We can talk about how to redeploy or deploy capital to new, earlier stage, brand new, as for that matter, companies from that fund, but also Elevate Ventures and the whole kind of stair-stepping funding approach and counseling approach and assistance for these new companies that are getting in. But it is trending in the right direction, the next level fund, and I'm wide open to suggestions. In fact, I mean, we shouldn't, again, back to the sense of urgency, we shouldn't wait for the budget session. We should be talking about tweaks that we need to make coming up in January. So it's very timely. First thing I asked Jen when I walked in is, you got some, to-do list items. She gave me 4.
Always.
Which is great. And if we can improve it, let's do it.
Yeah, and one you just pointed out, and Next Level Fund to date is not investing in some of the startup infrastructure that's out here today that wasn't in existence. We started one of our sponsors, and see over your shoulder there, 68 Capital.
Yeah.
She's doing just a phenomenal job, particularly in the Black-Brown community.
Yep.
Alos now has a seed stage and a seed team, and with these organizations on the top end, helping nurture both at the economic level as well as the business level. It's great infrastructure we didn't have, and we could earmark some of those funds headed that way. I think it'd be a tremendous boon for everybody.
Yeah, we've committed $153 million. We've committed $153 million, or $88 million is to Indiana companies. So how do you continue to grow that 88 to 150, or the balance of the 250 as you're generating revenue, and can do more down the line as well?
Yeah. The last panel was just up, was doing a great job. In fact, even the morning panel was at some point pointed on the talent shortage. I think that same Brookings report reported that the colleges in Indiana produce the people that we need for virtually every management position in the state, except for the tech community. And it's just a dog-eat-dog world out here, and trying to get those highly skilled individuals. One's coming out of schools to stay here, folks in the other community. We had a great presentation last session about remote workers and bringing them. Is there anything that the state is working on or could help in trying to engage that community and get more talent here to build this growing economy we've got going?
Absolutely. And there are some, I think, pipelines already built, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
They may be for different sectors, as you state. You're correct. But they can easily be retrofitted to this sector, need to be. By the way, I think one of the biggest, again, not to go back to the Tokyo City, but whether it's in K through 12 or in college campuses, I think employers should be camped out on campuses. We sometimes get our lunch eaten by companies from other states who come in to our world-class universities, research and development, 30 privates. We have so much talent here, and the rest of the world knows that.
Oh, yeah.
And the rest of the world pays for that. But they're here, so we have to compete. We can't take it for granted. We have to, it's easier for us to get there and have a presence there, and then develop pipelines. I was just, not too far away from here, talking to the CEO of Aptiv. And he was talking about how he has engineers and they're making $300,000-$400,000 a year. But what he really needs is another 100 employees, teammates that have a 2-year degree. And so his PhDs aren't doing the work that someone who's credentialed and certified and has a pathway to continue to go as far as they want. But what he needs is those 100. Well, let's develop that direct pipeline into Ivy Tech or VU or Anderson or you name it. They're all within a stone's throw. It's a huge advantage for us. Sweetwater up in Fort Wayne, fabulously successful company, sat at a table with probably 6 or 7 CEOs, and everyone was talking about workforce shortage. He's in the process of hiring another 1,000 people. I said, Chuck, you haven't chimed in. What's going on? He goes, I just developed my own pipelines. I'm at Purdue. I'm at Ball State. Started naming these universities with music programs that he's just hiring direct. and he's cultivating them. And, colleges are contacting high school students to recruit them to come, and businesses are staying with, college students when they're sophomores. So I think not to deflect, and I'll get back to what we can do, but we have to be a partner in that effort, whether it's employer training grants or workforce ready grants, or getting at both ends of the spectrum and helping businesses grow by paying actually for the training that the company needs. But we got to build those pipelines, and we have to just accept the fact that there are people. I don't know if anyone's from Cummins here, so I'm just going to use them as an example. There are companies on both coasts that love our workforce, and they poach successfully, and they pay for it. So that low cost of doing business in the state of Indiana, which is an advantage for us, also is very attractive to some company on the West Coast that looks at the Cummins employee and goes, they're proven, I'd like to pay them twice as much. So we have to compete on that. And then I've been staring at this Ready Pro, but the other thing that we have to do as a state is people got to want to live here, right? I mean, you got to, and so what are we doing? And we're putting our money where our mouth is, and we're investing in quality of place, and making sure not that we're just connected, but when you think about this, is I believe the only program in the country right now. I'll probably get called out for this, but in the country that is actually designed to bridge the urban-rural divide. And in the world that we live in, that's so polarized, that's drifting apart in terms of health indicators, education indicators, connectivity indicators, this is actually doing the exact opposite. It's trying to pull together regions, urban and rural. It is actually erasing lines, partisan lines, municipal lines, county lines. So the READY program is investing, and by the way, as you I'm sure saw come across your radar screen, I mean, we made this initial major $500 million investment, and it's attracted, $13 billion that was on the sidelines. We've never seen anything like this before, and it's all getting at what you're talking about: talent, attraction, workforce development, innovation programs for communities. How we go from, Kokomo, who 10 years ago on Forbes was rated as one of the top 10 places in America that was going to die. It's going to look at, they just reported they had population increase in this latest. How they do it, and what are they looking at doing over the next 10 years? So this READY program is a big darn deal, and I'm going to try to go out and get even more funding if the projects that were submitted are quality projects, worthy, not just shovel ready, but really worthy of big equation changing, the outcome of the equation. We need to fund those, because this is, talk about carpe diem, this is a moment of which 500 million or $1 billion can equate to 14 billion statewide, simultaneous, for 3 or 4 years, in addition to what the private sector is doing every single day, and the state government, local governments are doing as well.
I think you hit an interesting comment in there. Reminded me probably 25, 30 years ago, I'm standing at Purdue University at a job fair. I have Motorola on one side. I had Microsoft on the other side of me in the booth. I'm handing out Frisbees. They're handing out stock options. And it was pretty
I've
damn
heard
tough
Dell's like that too.
to compete at that point in time. So we decided to come back and, as you pointed out, grow our own. And we started a phenomenal internship program and catch them before they get caught up by the big companies. And we have a lot of great things. And a very valid point made earlier this morning, I think keys into this one too, is a lot of folks are afraid about staying in Indiana because we're kind of viewed as a one-horse town. Yeah. And there's no real opportunity. But we've got places all over the state, all over the city, that if it doesn't work out here, I can go here and I can go here. Exactly. You might have to drive. You're not going to walk next door like Silicon Valley, but there are just tremendous opportunities.
That's the
everywhere.
ecosystem, and that's what Next Level Fund, all these different funds and programs and pipelines, they have to lead directly to something.
Right.
And the other thing we have to do, and you mentioned it, we're humble people. And I said when I was forming my cabinet, there's 3 boxes you got to check. You got to be honest, you got to be humble, But please do not mistake being humble for lazy. You got to be hungry. And if we're hungry, then it allows us to go share the message, and that's incumbent upon us to do that, because if we don't, it's advantage the competition.
Yeah, shame on us. Shame on us. Next question, and the rise in cybersecurity is front page of the paper, I think, virtually every day going on here somewhere across the country about government, private companies, hospitals, citizens' data is being captured and misused. The risk is a significant concern, growing at a national and a state level. How can Indiana continue to address the cybersecurity risk and embrace opportunities that could come from a very growing cybersecurity industry here in the state?
Did you write this question, Joe? No. How? Well, it's a huge undertaking. It's one of those, top 3 issues that keeps people up at night when you're read into everything that's going on, and the ability that actors have from far away to next door, all the time in the world. They're relentless. And the ability with technology right now to, land a plane differently than it's being piloted, or change a property tax bill in a county courthouse, or your medication when you go to the pharmacy, or your business or state government data it's under a constant threat. And so very early on, not to be bureaucratic about this, but we established a council that's got various private sectors, got 20 different committees. I mean, it's just maddening how bureaucratic it is, but it's 20 different committees, and it's 200 members, and it's, for the state, speaking for the state, it's Indiana National Guard and state police and Homeland Security and everyone that, IoT, everyone that would have a either primary or collateral duty in this regard. And we're constantly, hospitals, schools, assessing what those threats are and then what we need to do about it. I'm very mindful of the government sector, all 3, local, state, and federal, and we have that representation there too, and the private sector as well. And this is one of those expenses, and those committees and that council actually is the entity that is making the recommendations in response to what we need to do, in regards to what we need to do, and in response to what maybe has happened that we didn't catch in the very outset. But this is an investment. It's a security investment, just like you would for every other part of your company or our state government that we have to continue to invest in. Unfortunately, it's not, or I shouldn't say unfortunately, it's not talked about publicly because so much is occurring so often.
I was talking to a group of investors in First Internet Bank the other day. They actually made that comment. You never talk about your security and your background. I said, I don't want to wave a red flag in front of a 13-year-old. And come at me.
Exactly.
He probably could, but it is something that, without question, we all need to work together and share best practices in the background play. As somebody just hacked the lighting system.
That is blunt. That is blunt. There's a cane and there's lights, and they gave us the lights.
Exactly. They caught us. Jennifer coming up.
She's
our timekeeper
lurking over your shoulder.
I had nothing to do with the lights.
I think we have.
I know they did.
We have 3 minutes. I've been asking you questions. Is there anything you want to share with the crew that's not scripted or on here that's good and going on here in the state of Indiana?
I'm so optimistic, even with all the challenges, and not just about ready, but I was traveling home yesterday from Stellantis. They just announced they were investing another $225 million. This is a highly technical, company defining the future of mobility along with our other auto partners in the state of Indiana. But on the drive home, I was going through the list of other announcements. Catalent down in Bloomington announcing yesterday they're hiring another 500 to 600 employees. Richmond, a company, announced yesterday they were hiring 65. Elkhart, Indiana, Amazon e-commerce center, going to hire 1,000 people. You know, and it just kept coming and kept coming. And those are the pressures that, you know, as this economy, I don't want to outkick our coverage. we've got to skill up, and it's got to start very young. And the corporate community has got to be central and ingrained in the process, like part of the process. And by the way, and that's not to beat up on or blame-storm or project, you know, it's your fault, my fault. That is to, we got to go to our teachers and our schools, K through 12, and say, let's I want to help, you know, like let's do this together. And once we start kind of turning that corner on a scale like we've never seen before, then we're gonna be answering the first two questions you had in multiple ways, not just looking for one silver bullet.
That's great.
Or one fund.
Well, we appreciate your time today, and I can tell you everybody in this room is willing to help any way that we can. So call on us anytime. We're here to assist, and thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, David. Always good to see you.